The Man Who Waited in the Rain. Portland in March is a city of gray and green. The rain doesn't pound. It whispers, constant and cold, seeping into bones and brick alike. Emma Hartley knew this rain well. She'd grown up with it, learned to find comfort in its persistence, the way it never apologized for being what it was. She stood under the awning of Stumptown Coffee on Division Street, watching the man in the dark blue Honda Civic parked across the street. He'd been there for 20 minutes now, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead at nothing. The rain streaked down his windshield in rivers, blurring the world outside, but he didn't move, didn't start the engine, just sat there, frozen. Emma recognized him. James Caldwell, father of Sophie Caldwell, one of her ninth-grade English students at Selwood Middle School. She'd seen him at parent-teacher conferences. Always punctual, always polite, always alone. He had that look men get when they're holding too much inside, when asking for help feels like admitting defeat. Sophie hadn't been to class in 3 days. Emma should have gone inside, ordered her usual oat milk latte, driven home to her small apartment in Hawthorne, where her cat and a stack of ungraded essays waited. It wasn't her responsibility. She already did too much. Stayed after school, tutoring kids who fell behind, bought supplies with her own meager salary, wrote college recommendation letters on weekends. Her therapist, Dr. Chen, was always saying, "You can't save everyone, Emma. You need boundaries." But there was something about the way James sat there in the rain, so completely still, that made her cross the street. She tapped on the driver's window, gently. James, startled, turned, and Emma saw his eyes, red-rimmed, exhausted, the eyes of someone who hasn't slept in days. He lowered the window slowly, and the smell of stale coffee and something else, desperation, maybe, drifted out. "I'm sorry to startle you," Emma said, rain already soaking into her jacket. "I'm Sophie's English teacher, Emma Hartley." He blinked, confused. I know who you are. Sophie talks about you." "She hasn't been to class this week." Emma hesitated. "Is everything okay?" James opened his mouth, closed it. His right hand trembled on the steering wheel, and then, as if the words had been dammed up so long they couldn't hold any more, he said, "I don't know what to do anymore." It wasn't an answer. It was a surrender. Emma didn't think. She opened the passenger door and got in. "Talk to me." James looked at her, surprised, as if no one had offered him this space in a very long time, and then, there, in a rain-soaked car on a Monday afternoon in Portland, he broke. James Caldwell had been a widower for 2 years. His wife, Rebecca, died of ovarian cancer when Sophie was 12. The diagnosis came fast. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. He'd watched his wife shrink, watched her lose her hair, her appetite, her laughter. And through it all, he'd tried to be strong for Sophie. After Rebecca died, he thought they'd grieve together, heal together. But Sophie shut down. She stopped talking about her mother, stopped crying, just went numb, like she'd locked all her pain in a box and swallowed the key. At first, James thought it was normal. Everyone grieves differently. The school counselor said to give her time, so he did. He worked his job as a civil engineer, came home, made dinner, asked about her day. She'd answer in monosyllables, retreat to her room, close the door. Then came the warning signs. Sophie stopped eating. Lost 15 pounds in 2 months, stopped seeing friends. Her grades, once straight A's, plummeted. Teachers called. She was sleeping in class, turning in blank assignments, staring out windows. Last week, James found a razor blade hidden under her mattress. Not his razor, a new one, still wrapped. The kind you hide for one specific purpose. He'd confronted her. She screamed that he didn't understand, that he never understood, that she wished he'd died instead of Mom. Then she locked herself in the bathroom for 3 hours while James sat outside the door, terrified, begging her to come out. She did, eventually. Came out silent, eyes empty, and went to bed. James made an appointment with a therapist. Sophie refused to go. He tried to talk to her. She shut him out. He considered quitting his job, staying home full-time, but the bills wouldn't stop, and Rebecca's medical debt still loomed. He was drowning, and he didn't know how to save his daughter when he could barely keep himself afloat. "I'm afraid I'm going to lose her," James said, his voice cracking. "I already lost my wife. I can't lose my daughter too." Emma felt something tighten in her chest. She knew that fear, knew it intimately. When Emma was 19, her younger brother Lucas killed himself.
He was 16, a sophomore in high school, struggling with depression that no one, not their parents, not his friends, not Emma, had recognized as life-threatening. He'd seemed quiet, withdrawn, but they thought it was teenage moodiness. Until the day Emma came home from college for Thanksgiving and found him hanging in the garage. She'd spent years asking herself what she'd missed, what she could have done. It drove her to education, to working with adolescents, to learning the signs she'd been too young and too blind to see in her own brother. She recognized those signs in Sophie. "You're not alone in this," Emma said firmly. "And Sophie isn't lost. She's drowning and trying not to drag you down with her. That's different." James looked at her, and for the first time, there was something besides despair in his eyes. There was relief. Someone saw, "What do I do?" "You keep going. Keep waking up. Keep making her breakfast, even if she doesn't eat it. Keep knocking on her door, even if she doesn't answer and you accept help." Emma took a breath. "I can help, not as a teacher, as someone who's been where Sophie is." James stared at her. "Why would you do that? You don't even know us." "Because someone did it for me once, and because I recognize a father who loves too much to give up." They sat there in silence, listening to the rain drum on the roof. Then Emma wrote her number on a coffee-stained napkin from the cup holder. "Call me when you need to, 3 a.m., noon, whenever. I'll answer." James held the napkin like it was a lifeline. The first visit was awkward. Emma showed up at their small bungalow in Selwood on a Saturday afternoon with a bag of books. YA novels about grief, about survival, about girls who felt broken but weren't. Sophie answered the door, looked at Emma with suspicion and something else. Recognition, maybe. The recognition of someone who knows you see them. "Your dad asked me to drop these off," Emma lied smoothly. "Thought you might like them." Sophie took the bag without a word, but she didn't close the door immediately. That was something. Emma started coming by once a week. Never forced conversation, just sat in the living room with James and Sophie, drinking tea, sometimes reading aloud, sometimes just existing in the same space. She learned that Sophie loved art but had stopped drawing, that she used to play soccer but quit the team, that her mother had made the best chocolate chip cookies, and Sophie couldn't look at the recipe without crying. Slowly, incrementally, Sophie started talking, not about the big things, about small things, a book she'd read, a show she was watching, a memory of her mom that didn't hurt quite as much anymore. James watched this unfold with something like wonder. Emma was doing what he couldn't, giving Sophie permission to be broken without fixing her, to hurt without shame, to heal at her own pace. One evening in late May, after Emma had left, James found Sophie in the kitchen attempting to bake cookies from Rebecca's old recipe. The kitchen was a disaster, flour everywhere, eggshells on the counter, but Sophie was crying while she stirred, and crying meant feeling, and feeling meant alive. James helped her finish the batch. They burned half of them, ate them anyway. The turning point came in June. Emma invited Sophie to a grief support group for teens at a community center in southeast Portland. Sophie had refused therapy, but this was different. Peers who understood, who'd lost parents and siblings and friends. Emma went with her to the first meeting, sat in the back, ready to leave if Sophie wanted. Sophie stayed for the whole hour, didn't say a word but listened. Heard other kids talk about the guilt, the anger, the feeling of being abandoned even though they knew it wasn't their fault. After the meeting, in the parking lot, Sophie turned to Emma and said, her voice small, "Does it get easier?" Emma thought about Lucas, about the decade that had passed, the therapy, the work, the slow learning to carry grief without letting it crush her. "It gets different," Emma said honestly. "Some days are better. Some days you'll still feel like you're drowning, but you learn to swim, and you learn who to call when you can't." Sophie nodded. Then, unexpectedly, she hugged Emma. Quick, fierce, desperate, Emma hugged her back. By summer, Sophie was returning to herself, or maybe becoming someone new, someone shaped by loss, but not defined by it. She started drawing again, dark charcoal sketches that made James's heart ache, but also proud. She went back to therapy, found a counselor she actually liked. She made plans to return to school in the fall, maybe try art club. James watched his daughter come back to life and felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. One evening in late July, after Sophie had gone to bed, James and Emma sat on the back porch of his house. The rain had finally stopped, and Portland summer was humid and warm. Fireflies blinked in the dark yard. "You saved her," James said quietly. "You saved my daughter, and I think you saved me too." Emma shook her head. "I didn't save anyone. She saved herself. You saved her by not giving up. I just showed up. That's everything." They sat in comfortable silence. Then James said, tentative, "Would you maybe want to have dinner? Just the two of us? Not about Sophie, just us?" Emma looked at him, saw not the desperate man in the rain-soaked car, but someone who'd survived hell and chosen to keep going. Someone who loved fiercely. Someone worth knowing. "I'd like that," she said. Emma Hartley had learned in her years of grief and teaching and healing that salvation doesn't come from heroics. It comes from showing up, from saying, "I see you" when someone feels invisible, from sitting in rain-soaked cars and messy kitchens and silent living rooms. Just being present, James Caldwell had been drowning in silence, paralyzed by fear and grief. Sophie had been slipping away, inch by inch. But someone crossed the street. Someone knocked on the window. Someone said, "You don't have to do this alone." And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes love doesn't look like rescue. It looks like showing up again and again until the person you love remembers how to breathe. Portland kept raining. The world kept turning. But in a small house in Selwood, a father and daughter learned to live again. And the woman who taught them, she learned that healing others sometimes heals yourself, not completely. Never completely. But enough. Enough to keep going. Enough to keep showing up. Enough to cross the street when you see someone waiting in the rain.